Duck, duck, goose. Good morning, coaches. Today I'm going to be talking through a basic defensive principle practice, giving players the opportunity to work on some 1v2s, focusing on some different defensive principles. The way it's formatted, we have our grid about 25 by 15. We have our attacker in yellow starting back here behind the goal that they are, will be defending. And we have our two defenders positioned as such. We have our goal line, which means that our attacker can't shoot on this side of the line. They have to get past this line in order to shoot. And we have our ball started right here. So basic starting point, 3, 2, 1, go. Our attacker and covering defender start at the same point, and the covering defender has to race around this corner before entering the grid, and our attacker simply has to race towards the ball in order to begin the attack. As soon as the attacker touches the ball, our defender here, who is placed just behind the goal line, can do a couple of things, because really that is where the flux begins. We have the situation where the attacker has a little bit of an advantage. We have our covering defender and a little bit of flux, and we have our first step defender, our first defender having to make a decision about what they're going to have to do. So with this, how we're going to work, I'm going to talk to the defenders first, and the first thing we're going to do is, this defender, your job is to apply some real pressure. Your cue is press. And when we press, we want to be thinking, can we make the attacker uncomfortable? Can we make them do something that they don't want to do? If our real press is simply just to kind of stand up here, allowing our attacker to have some free movement left or right, that might be not the kind of real pressure we want. We want them to do something they don't want to do. So that might mean our real pressure might be a little too much pressure too quickly, and that's okay. We want our defenders to kind of realize and understand how real pressure can be applied. How much is too much and how much is too little, that Goldilocks zone, just right. Meanwhile, our covering defender, is going to see this real pressure being applied, and so they're going to have to cover. How are they going to cover? Based on the amount of real pressure, based on the direction of pressure, and how that attacker responds is going to influence how the covering defender is going to have to cover. Will they need to hold based on the amount of pressure applied? Will they need to cover in the middle? How is that going to be, how is that going to manifest and emerge based on the situation as it develops? We're going to go through a few reps, giving this attacker, and have a couple attackers back here, and the defenders are kind of work on their own initially, and then we're going to adjust it. So we'll switch roles. The defender who is initially covering, they'll switch, and instead of press, now we're going to think, what's going to happen if upon the attacker first touching the ball, what happens if we ask that first defender to hold, protect the goal? Is that going to influence first how this covering defender covers? Because now if this player is holding, this player is going to have to make a decision. Well, now as the attacker is coming in, are they coming at an angle going towards the open goal? At which point I need to apply some real pressure to influence them to go back the opposite way towards my support. Or am I also going to hold, giving them a different kind of movement look at what they might do? So again, thinking about how we can give our defenders different cues, giving them different ways to respond to the situation is going to help them understand what's going to work best for them in the moment. And even for the attacker, it's going to give them opportunities, even though we're working on defensive principles. How can I both attack, and if I lose it, how can I defend? Because of course, we also want the defenders to have a goal to which they can attack if they win the ball. We always want to maintain that attack and defend, otherwise it's not as representative. And so, maybe after we do this a few more times, we're going to switch it up. Maybe we'll switch the attackers and move them to defense, and move the defenders to attackers. And then we might also just, switch sides, adjusting the starting points. So instead of the attacker coming around to the right side, having them come around to the left. And 3, 2, 1, go. And then maybe we open it up and say, now players, now you decide. Maybe now instead of the coach giving the cue, press, hold, now based on having gone through this a bit, now you get to decide. Maybe you want the covering defender to make the call, press, hold, based on how fast they are, based on the opponent. But really, we're trying to have this as an exploratory process for players to kind of see what works best for them, based on defensive principles, based on those good habits, and based on the cues that we often see in games. Yeah, duck, duck, goose. Cheers.